Hey, what's going on? Luke here, and we have a brand new series to introduce on the channel. We're going to be going over the strengths and weaknesses of every side going into the brand new season. This being 2025, the first team being the Parramatta Eels. Now, there's been a lot said about the Parramatta Eels, and obviously they had a pretty poor 2024 for many reasons, injuries, and just a lot of the players are so hot and cold, and obviously there's been the departure of Gutherson and plenty of new signings, so there's a lot to talk about with the Parramatta Eels. And there's a lot of strengths and weaknesses, and that's what I thought would be fun to talk about, whether it's them, whether it's the Bulldogs. The Broncos are another good one. Essentially, every side has their pros and cons, and that's sort of what we're going to be going over. Like I said, starting off with the Parramatta Eels. Now, they've made some big signings, like your Josh Addo-Carrs. Zach Lomax was the big one that's been going around for a long time. They have lost some players, though. Gutherson, been their leader for many, many years. Longi, being one of their most promising juniors, has gone to the Penrith Panthers. Don't be shocked if he ends up as the next absolute superstar of the game. Or it might be a flop, who knows. We'll have to wait and see. His defense is a little bit shoddy. But just in terms of the Eels, are they going to be better or worse than they were in 2024 in 2025? Genuinely, I don't know. I mean, I look at the actual 1-17, and there's a big part of me that thinks this team it's not any better. It's not any better, however, you got to keep in mind that Mitchell Moses was out for a large majority of the season. So by no means were the Eels at their best in 2024. Kind of reminds me of the Broncos a little bit. A very, very poor year, but if you actually look at some of the lineups that they fielded, pretty terrible. But we're going to go over the strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to start off with the strengths, and that's what we're going to be doing for the rest of the series. So the first one we're going to be talking about is the fact that just their attack. I think their attack would be so much better. We saw Sean Lane had a documentary and all that sort of stuff. We have all these guys, Junior Paulo, a lot of these guys who are great with the ball in hand. And that's always kind of been the Eels' strength, the ball in hand. Then you add in your Zach Lomaxes, your Josh Addo-Carr, even Longi from the Panthers. They seem to be a lot more attacking based. And a lot of these guys are guys who can create something from nothing. And a lot of these points are sort of going to translate into the next one as well. In fact, I might just mention a few. Obviously, Addo-Carr, I think Addo-Carr's a big signing for them. Something that they weren't really expecting. Now, Lomax, he'd signed a long time in advance, so we always knew Zach Lomax was signing. And this was even, I think, before he'd even played State of Origin, all that sort of stuff. Obviously, the whole centre wing debacle, we'll get to that. But we knew Zach Lomax was coming, but we didn't know Josh Addo-Carr was going to be in the market. And that is a great pickup. You add in little combinations, and I think their backline is looking pretty stacked. I mean, that 1-7, I think would be very good. Simonson comes back into the side. He's back from injury. Penasini, another year in the NRL. He's very, very solid. I don't know if he'll ever end up being the star centre that we thought he might have been, but he is just a solid centre in general. Obviously, Lomax is there. You got Josh Addo-Carr. So you have so many threats, and the backline is so lethal. It all kind of comes down to Longi, whether he can sort of find his feet in first grade. But you got so much pace, you got so much aerial attack. That was kind of my big point, is that they have the aerial threat, and we saw it at the Dragons. But when times were tough and things just weren't really working out for the Dragons, the amount of points that they scored, or just opportunities that were created, just from the fact that they had Zach Lomax in the vicinity, and we saw that with New South Wales as well. You can just kick for Zach Lomax, and if he's around the area, there's going to be a threat for the opposition, and also there's just a threat that you might score a try. You add in Josh Addo-Carr, if they're on the same side, flick passes, we've seen that's been Lomax's big thing when he played in the centres. Always try the flick passes. Didn't really work, rarely worked, to be honest with you. It's probably one of the biggest flaws with Zach Lomax, is that he tried a little bit too much in the centres, but let's get the ball to Josh Addo-Carr, and he's gone. He's gone. The amount of tries the Bulldogs scored in the last couple of seasons just from a kick that, if you kick it to a lot of other players, nothing really happening too much. But he just has that knack, being in the right place, just gets the right bounce. Josh Addo-Carr, he's just a try scorer. He's a try scoring freak, and I'm a Bulldogs fan, and I'm saying this. Ideally, like, our strongest side, Josh Addo-Carr would have been there, 100%. There's a big reason why in the finals, Josh Addo-Carr didn't play. We struggled big time. We had Skelton come in, and Skelton had all these raps on him, but he got found out big time. Addo-Carr, intercepts, just even in defence, just communication, energy to the side. He's a great contribution to the side. You add in Zach Lomax as well. I know it's a position change, but just if things don't work out, you can always chuck him on the other wing. There's just always going to be that threat that Zach Lomax can do something. I don't think he's going to, grab the ball and step everybody or whatever. I don't even necessarily know if he's going to end up in the centres long term, but he's definitely signed as a centre, and I think he can do some positive things. Now, Sivo's not going to be there, but Simonson, Simonson can be pretty decent on his day. Penasini can be an absolute stud if he gets things going. And then you add in Lomax and Addo-Carr, and Longi's apparently got a lot of potential as well. You add in the halves combination of Dylan Brown, Mitchell Moses, that 1-7, just that back line. It's quick, it's agile, it kind of fits the modern game very, very well. So I think it could be a great 1-7. The rest of the side we'll get into, but that 1-7, I think will be pretty lethal. A lot of it comes down to the fullback. But the Eels are definitely going to score tries that they wouldn't have in the past. And I think Mitchell Moses, similar to Matt Burton, he's one of those guys that he's got a great kicking game. And I think he can take advantage of a Josh Addo-Carr and a Zach Lomax. He can pinpoint some kicks. And I think we'll see some impressive things from these guys. And even just the experience of Mitchell Moses going and playing for Australia. He played some more games for New South Wales. Lomax has got some more experience in terms of rep jerseys. And then Addo-Carr has got so much experience as well. So there is a lot of experience that kind of balances it out. And then you add in, I think, a big problem for the Eels was Brad Arthur. Now, the whole thing of them, they sacked him just randomly. I think that was kind of the big talking point, was that they sacked him randomly. They didn't really have a replacement, but they got Jason Ryles. And I think Jason Ryles, I think he'll end up being a pretty decent coach. Whether he's some super coach or whatever, I think it's kind of a little bit overdone. But I think he'll be a solid coach. I think he'll be an upgrade on what they've had in previous years. Now, Brad Arthur by no means was a bad coach. I just don't think they were going to win a comp or anything like that with him there. And I think Jason Ross comes in. I think he just has he has the right attitude. He's come from the Melbourne system, and that again is very hit and miss. This whole sort of theory that if you work under Craig Bellamy or you work under Ivan Cleary or Wayne Bennett or whatever, that you're just going to be a sure thing for being a great coach. For every stud coach that we've had come under the tutelage of those sort of guys, we've had some Steve Kearneys and such as well. So it's not a sure thing by any means, but I think Jason Ross, at least he's got the right idea, and you can see that by the signings, that he's not trying to sign, big name players just for the sake of it. He's trying to find guys who fit the side. That's what I mean. With Josh Addo-Carr coming in, he's a guy who turned around the Bulldogs culture. Just gets him going. He's so positive. I think Zach Lomax, obviously, was signed before he had sort of come to the club, but again, a positive signing for them. And then you add in just the fitness of players that they're going to have that they didn't have last year. I mean, Moses, he came back and played for Australia, but he wasn't fit for a large part of the season. And then obviously I talked to Gutherson and a few of those sort of guys. They're going to have guys who are fresh and back and not missing. They're going to actually have a full strength side. So at full strength, I feel like they've got a lot of good pieces for the Eels. Probably missing a few pieces, but for the most part, they've got a lot of good pieces in terms of putting together a pretty decent squad. But I did touch on the fact that they are missing a few, and that's where we're going to get into the weaknesses. They are missing a few pieces of the puzzle, and I think they are quite big. And I feel like if they make a couple signings, I feel like it can make a drastic difference. It's just a matter of whether they can actually pull it off or who's on the market and such. And it won't be happening in 2025, I can tell you that much. Obviously, they have a rookie fullback. I think that's a big talking point. They got a rookie fullback, has a lot of rats from him, has come through the Panther system, but at the same time, so did a guy like Dane Laurie, you know what I mean? They've had Sean O'Sullivan. There's been a lot of guys who've gone into the Panther side and looked really good, and they've gone to other teams. And Dane Laurie was someone who looked pretty decent at times for the Tigers, but obviously didn't end up working out. And then you've got a guy like Longi coming in with similar raps. Dane Laurie was the guy who couldn't get a run because they had Dylan Edwards and had a few of these guys. But Longi, is he actually going to be good, or is he sort of in and out? I mean, Katoa gets talked about for the Dolphins as being an absolute prodigy. Nathan Cleary in front of him, but at this point he's sort of been in and out of first grade over the last couple of years as well, despite him looking pretty decent. Do the Eels need a guy who's going to be in and out of first grade? Great one game, not so great the next. And we see that a lot with fullbacks, especially young ones. Sloan for the Dragons is like a big example of that. At his best, when he's scoring tries, he looks fantastic, and you think this guy could be the future of the club. And then next minute, he's dropping bombs, and he can't do anything right. And you're like, all right, chuck him in reserve grade, he's not ready. I don't know if this guy's going to be ready. He's not really shown anything to say that he's going to be ready, other than he's come from the Panthers. We got rid of Gutherson. This guy must be ready. That's pretty much all it comes down to. A little bit of a hit and hope sort of thing with Longi at fullback. I hope for the Eels' sake that he ends up being good, but there's nothing really to say that he's going to be, some stud fullback, especially when they've gone from Gutherson, who was the heart and soul in that club. And that's another weakness, is losing Gutherson. He's a guy who the fans would get behind. Someone that, he put his absolute heart and soul into that club, tried his guts out every week. And I feel like that's what the Eels miss a lot, is you miss a lot of those guys who look like they're trying every week, whether they're winning, whether they're losing. you see guys like your Sean Lanes and some of the other guys who, you know, when they're good, you're like, wow, they're really good. But when they're playing bad, like, you can definitely tell that they're playing bad. Like Bryce Cartwright's another one. You know, when things are going bad, they're going really, really bad. And I feel like the Eels have a lot of that, and they have for many, many years. Whether they can eradicate that with the new signings and Jason Riles coming in, maybe it's a mentality thing, I don't know. But just their play style sort of with, you know, Junior Paulo, very like offload base and that sort of stuff. And again, I've touched on a lot of these things in the strengths as why they could be strengths, but they can also be weaknesses too. Josh Addo-Carr, he got sacked by the Dogs, and I'm not going into like why he got sacked, but just the fact that he was very, very inconsistent for the Dogs in the last couple of seasons where he couldn't really string a lot of games together. And I think ultimately that's why he ended up losing his origin spots and, you know, the Australian representative spots, is because he was constantly getting injured and he's bulked up a lot. I feel like he's lost a touch of pace. Not that I don't think that's a massive thing, because he's still faster than the majority of the players, and like I said, he gets into the right places and stuff. But this is a guy who has hamstring injuries, and he is aging, and he is a lot more bulkier, and a lot of things that we came to love with Josh Addo-Carr, he can't really do these days. And I think that's kind of a big reason why the Dogs ended up sort of getting rid of him, or were comfortable with getting rid of him. And I know as a fan, I want to see Josh Addo-Carr there, but at the same time, I was like, well, Wilson can come in. We've had Wilson come in. We signed Montoya. We got Tuala coming in from the Knights. I mean, great player, but he's not irreplaceable. And I feel like for the Eels, great player. He's great signing. Going to add so much to the club in so many ways. But at the same time, he's on a guy who's aging, on the decline, and has a history of injuries. And then you got to pair him up with a guy who hasn't played centre in many, many years. And when he played centre, he was a guy that you looked at and you're like, mate, I don't know if this guy's even a first grader. Like, he's alright. He does a couple of good things here and there. You chuck him on the wing, he ends up becoming a representative star, one of the best players in the comp, best player for his team, and he's throwing a fit about playing in that position. So I don't know if that's a good omen for the Eels, is the fact that they've signed Zach Lomax as a centre who doesn't want to play wing, but his best position is clearly wing. All of his positive traits, they all seem to suit the wing position, yet he's so hell-bent on playing centre, and I don't think we're going to see the best footy out of him at centre. So for everything that could be a positive of pairing up Zach Lomax and Josh Addo-Carr, it could be fantastic, but Addo-Carr tends to sort of make some rash decisions in defence sometimes. Zach Lomax hasn't played centre for quite some time, and it's always talked about being a hard position to defend. And you think if he was a star centre, the Dragons would have played him in the centre. It's not like they've got these absolute stud centres. They've actually got some pretty decent wingers. They had plenty of players who could play the wing, and Zach Lomax ended up there and obviously reaped the rewards of it. So it kind of says that, like, maybe he's not a centre, but they're definitely going to try it, and I think maybe they'll get to some point and go, hey, look, he's not that good of a centre, or he'll be a decent centre, but he can be a decent centre or a superstar winger. It depends what you kind of want in your side. You can have two superstar wingers, but they're definitely not going to be going that route to start the season. And then obviously you have a bad start to the season. If things sort of don't go their way, then who knows what happens for the rest of it. And then the pressure's on, and then there's lots of talks about whether Lomax should be picked for New South Wales and all that sort of stuff, and the next minute he's probably on the wing. I don't know. That's just a theory out there. Another one that I touched on is the fact that they've replaced Gutherson with a rookie, essentially. And then you add in that the Swiner as a whole, like the actual halves combo, really, really good. Dylan Brown, I don't think is quite lived up to potential, but Mitchell Moses, I think, has gone beyond what I ever thought he was going to be as a player. I think he's an absolute superstar halfback. If you take out Nathan Cleary, I think Mitchell Moses is your second best halfback in the comp, and I think he's right up there by quite some distance as to why he was the Australian halfback. You know, all the talk about Cherry Evans, all that sort of stuff, but Mitchell Moses really cemented himself as the second best. And on his day, can be the best. You know what I mean? He's that good. Mitchell Moses, I really, really rate him. He's great at controlling it and all that sort of stuff. And I think Dylan Brown can be a good 5'8" for him. But at the same time, Dylan Brown can sort of drift in and out of games. You add in a rookie fullback. You add in arguably the worst dummy half in the comp, whether it's Brendan Hands, whether it's Joey Lussick. Easily number 9 is their biggest problem. And it probably always will be, at least for the next couple of seasons, until they sign someone. And when I've talked about them just needing the final pieces of the puzzle, I feel like the number 9 is a big, big issue. And it is at a lot of clubs, but they had Reid Marnie and they lowballed him essentially and ended up leaving to go to the Bulldogs. Didn't even sign a massive contract. And you can see that they didn't replace him. And all these guys that they tried out, there were some guys who had some okay games here and there, but Brendan Hands isn't it, Lussick isn't it, and they don't have anyone else in the wings to come in and take their spot. So they've kind of just got to make do with what they got at this point. And then as well that their forwards are incredibly weak. They've lost Campbell-Gillard, which is something I haven't touched on enough. But Campbell-Gillard is gone. He's signed with the Titans. So they have Junior Paulo. Apart from that, they don't really have anyone of note in the forwards. Sean Lane has gone massively downhill. They got Longi, I think that's his name. Came from Manly. Like, he's okay. A lot of other clubs, he'd probably be playing reserve grade. That's what I mean. They've got a lot of guys who can come in and play a couple of games, and they might be half decent, but they got a lot of guys who, end of the day, are probably like fringe first graders, and they're playing week in, week out. And I feel like that's a big problem for the Eels is the forward pack. Back's going to be decent. They remind me of the Bulldogs a couple of years ago. Going to be able to produce some stuff. I mean, Matt Burton, he's kicked Josh Addo-Carr and all that sort of stuff. I think they'll be able to score some points through Zach Lomax, through Josh Addo-Carr, Penasini, a few of those sort of guys. I feel like they'll be able to score some points, but I feel like they'll leak a lot of points and they'll get dominated in a lot of games. I don't think they're going to win a wooden spoon or anything, especially if they stay fit throughout the season, but I think it is going to be a tough and rough year for the Parramatta Eels. Well, that's the end of this video. If you happen to enjoy it, make sure you leave a like, subscribe. You know the drill at this point. Everybody YouTuber says it. Just go ahead and do it. It'd really help me out. Also, why not go ahead and check out some of these other videos that are on the screen right now.